Oh, man. It is good to be with you guys. And it is just so good to be here right in the middle of summer. And really, it's been an incredible summer so far with bonfires and summer camp coming up. Really, 2 weeks from tonight, we'll be worshiping together as a church at summer camp. And I can't wait for that. I'm excited. I was just recently talking with our camp speaker, and he's really getting ready to go. So it's really been an incredible summer so far, and we're grateful for what the Lord has done and what He's continuing to do in hearts and lives. I just feel like I've gotten to meet so many incredible people this summer. Man, I've just seen a heart for people in this church of like, man, I just want to introduce more people to my church, but more importantly, to who Jesus is and what He's done on their behalf. And so that's just been a really cool thing for us. And so bonfires have been great, camp has been great, but then really in here, what we've been trying to do this summer is we've been trying to address sort of the thing that high school students and really what we all really want, not just in summer, but in life, and that's a life that's adventurous. A life that's bold and courageous and means something. A life that actually has substance to it beyond just sort of the superficial things of life. And so we've made a statement, really a claim over the last 4 weeks that we'll continue to make tonight. And that statement and claim is that faith in Jesus Christ, that a trust in the God of the universe is the adventure. Like the real adventure, the greatest adventure of your life is not something you will go do. It's faith. It's a trust in the living God of the universe. And so the first week in this teaching series, Drew talked about this character in the Old Testament called David. And if you're here tonight, maybe church isn't your thing, or you're new, just trying to figure this thing out, the Bible has the Old Testament and the New Testament. And both of them, the Old and New Testament, just mean the old and new way in which God related to people. And what we're looking at in this Old Testament, this way God was relating to people, is this character named David, who's ultimately going to be the king over Israel, which is God's people. And Drew talked about a couple weeks ago in the first week of this teaching series, he talked about David being anointed, chosen by God for this epic adventure. And he talked about how we're invited into that same adventure. And then just a couple weeks ago, Kelsey Alexander, our summer intern, talked about how David fought Goliath and how really what that story should stir us to is to see how Jesus fights for us on this adventure. And then last week, if you were here, what I talked about was friendship. And how the real adventure isn't just kind of you going off on your own doing something, but you accepting the people God has put into your life and placed around you and believing that loving them as you love yourself is the greatest adventure of your summer. And tonight we're going to pick up again with the story of David. Last week we talked about David and this guy Jonathan, and we talked about it in the first few verses of 1 Samuel 18, one of the books of the Old Testament. And we're going to pick up right where we left off tonight to see how this journey continues for David. Because David has just been selected to go on this adventure. He's just defeated Goliath. Now he has his best friend. And I want you to see how things are going because they're going well for David. Things are going very well for David. And they're about to get better. Here's what it says in verse 5 of chapter 18. It starts this way. It says, whatever mission Saul sent him on, David was so successful that Saul gave him a high rank in the army. This pleased all of the troops and Saul's officers as well. And so it begins this way. The story of David is he's continuing to succeed. It says everyone's pleased with him. He's going out as a military commander and he's going out and he's winning battles, which makes the king happy with him. And it says it makes the troops happy with him because they're winning battles, not losing, because they're not dying on the battlefield. The troops are happy with him. And then it says the officers are pleased with him as well. Because the officers are now starting to look good because David is doing so well. Here's a scenario where you've got this guy who just come off defeating Goliath, like this massive victory for him, and it seems like things just keep getting better and better and better and better. And then it proceeds this way as things get even better than that. It says, when the men were returning home after David killed the Philistine, the women came out from all the towns of Israel to meet King Saul with singing and dancing and with joyful songs and with timbrels and with lyres. I mean, don't miss this scene here. Like, I guess it's amazing. Like, they're coming home from battle, and like women are coming out of the house like, hey, like that's what's happening here. Like, it's this amazing thing. If you ever walk down the street and people leave their homes to be like, hello, like you know you're a big, like no one ever does that, but you know you're a big deal. People recognize him, they see him, they go, that's the guy who killed Goliath. Saul is getting famous, David is getting famous, they're being successful. Everything is going well for them. Maybe some of you tonight would say, man, everything in my life is going well right now. Maybe you're just in this sweet season right now. Maybe there's some small problems here and there, but maybe you're just in this sweet season where things are going really well. Life is going exactly as you wanted it. Your summer's going exactly as you hoped it would be going. And things are going well for David right now. Things are going well for Saul right now. But then this story takes kind of a strange turn here. Here's what it says. So all these people are coming out and they're celebrating, they're playing instruments, they're singing, they're dancing. And then verse 7 says this. It says, as they danced, they sang, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. Now think about this for a second. First off, they're singing this, and I have no idea what kind of tune is this country? Is this some sort of rap? Is this something, I don't know. If you have insider information on that, let me know. But I think the deeper question is this, if you're Saul, and you're hearing this, and it's just the first sentence, that Saul has slain his thousands, you feel pretty awesome about yourself. Because if you're a military guy and your job is to kill the bad guys who are fighting against you, the fact that you've killed thousands is pretty incredible. And in every way, that is incredible. And Saul is successful. And yet, here's how this little song they're singing continues. It says, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. Which, of course, if you're Saul and you've killed thousands, you feel pretty good about yourself until other people start pointing out that, in fact, David, this younger guy than you, this guy that you kind of brought on after you were already king, if he started doing this and he's killing tens of thousands, that's a problem, right? Because here's what tends to happen for those of you that are successful, and here's just kind of what I believe about most everyone who's ever lived. Like there's something in your life that you believe you're good at. And I don't know what that thing is for you. Maybe it's academics, and maybe you're the school person who gets a 4.6 GPA and you're really smart, and then maybe for you it's athletics. Maybe someone's giggling I didn't know you could get that. But then maybe for you, it's not academics, it's sports, and so you're the all-league person. You've got colleges looking at you, you're a big deal, you play well, you're known, people know you at the school as the person who plays that sport. And then maybe further still, it's not sports or academics. Maybe there's just a sort of popularity thing you have, where you post a photo on Instagram and you get 4 times as many likes as anyone else gets, and you just kind of feel good about yourself. They're I don't know what your thing is. Maybe it's the way you look. Maybe it's the way you dress. Maybe it's the family you come from. Maybe you kind of feel cool because you have the nicest car of anyone else. And listen, all of those things are good things. That's what I want to say. Here at High School Ministry, here at this church, what we don't want to say is all of the things in life that you could care about are bad things. But here's what we want to say. They're good things that if you start to find your meaning and purpose and happiness in life around those things, your joy is going to be robbed from you. Because in the same way that Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands, there's always going to be someone who's better than you. If you're an athlete, there's just always going to be someone who's better than you. If you're someone who's just super smart in school, maybe you're the smartest person at your school. You will go off to college someday and you will meet someone who's smarter than you. You'll meet someone who's more popular than you. You'll meet someone who's better looking than you. You'll meet someone who's skinnier than you. You'll meet someone who has a nicer car than you, who comes from a better family than you. If you spend your life comparing yourself and your accomplishments and your likes, if you just compare yourself to others, what we've said over and over and over again from this stage is that comparison is the thief of joy. And one of the ways for you to ruin your summer, one of the ways for you to rob yourself of all the joy you could have this summer, one of the best ways to do that is to start comparing yourself to others. And comparing your life and your body and your family and your money and your talent to other people's, because people will begin to compare you and say, you have slain your thousands, but this other person, their tens of thousands. And so here's David getting compared to Saul, and Saul getting compared negatively to David. And I want you to see how he responds. It says in verse 8, it says, Saul was very angry, and this refrain displeased him greatly. It says, they have credited David with tens of thousands, he thought, but me with only thousands. What more can he get but the kingdom? And from that time, Saul kept a close eye on David. Saul is starting to get insecure. And that's what we tend to do when people compare us and when we start to get into the comparison game. When we start to be like we're okay with ourselves, and then suddenly we start to compare and we start to get insecure. And you got Saul here saying like, what's next? Is he going to take over? Is he going to become the next king? You've got Saul starting to unravel a little bit. He's starting to get upset. He's starting to get angry. He's starting to get nervous. There's some ways in which Saul's soul is beginning to shrivel here. He's becoming bitter. He's becoming all twisted up over David. And I think there's something significant in the text that's happening here, or maybe we should say not happening here, that I need you to see. You see, we started this story with David, right? And David's been very successful in the military. And so we've got all these characters, but there's one character who hasn't entered the scene yet. Like we haven't gotten to see this character yet. It starts by talking about David, and he's going out on these missions, and he's being successful. Then it talks about Saul, and Saul's really happy with him, and the king's really happy, and he's promoting David. Then it talks about Saul's officers. Then it talks about Saul's troops. Then it talks about all the women coming out from the countryside, all of the people who are praising him. So there's all of these people that are participating in the story, but there's one character who's completely missing. And that one character is God. Not at one point in this story so far, not at one point in this sermon so far, has this text brought up God. It just hasn't happened. And maybe you're thinking this is kind of a stupid observation, like this is the Bible, of course God is involved here sometimes. And I would say yes and amen, God is involved here sometimes. But I think one of the points of this story is that all of these things are unfolding in David's life and Saul's life and everyone else's life, and no one's talking about God. No one's talking about him. They're assuming he's at the center of things, but actually he's nowhere to be found. And I wonder if some of you need to hear tonight, me lean on you a little bit, that you cannot just assume that Jesus is at the center of your life. Like some of you are Christians and you call yourselves followers of Jesus, but if you're honest with yourself this summer, you've just kind of been on autopilot with your faith. Like you show up on Sunday night and you think that's just kind of like, oh, I'll show up here at church and then I'll just kind of have my good summer and hang out with my friends, and surely at summer camp, that's when I'll reconnect with God and grow in my faith. I remember I was 21 years old. It was the summer of 2007, I believe. And it's the summer of 2007, and I was coming home from college for half of the summer, and the goal was half of the summer I was going to stay at home and rest, and then the second half of the summer I was going to go off to this camp I worked on in college, where we were going to teach people about Jesus. It was a summer camp just like the one we're going to now, and so we had this amazing opportunity. But summer camp was amazing, but it was also hard. It was exhausting. It was tiring. You ever come home from camp and you're just exhausted? Try doing that 10 weeks in a row. It's exhausting. And so in this first half of the summer, I had this agenda. This was summer 2007, and here was my agenda. My agenda was I'm going to rest. I'm going to spend time with my friends. I'm going to eat good food. I'm going to sleep in. I'm going to watch movies. I'm going to do nothing for these next 7 weeks so that I can prepare myself for the end of the summer and this camp experience I have coming. And honestly, I did it all. I hung out with all of the friends I wanted to hang out with. I got to see movies. I got to relax. I got to hang out. I got to do everything that I planned on doing. Everything I wanted that summer, it seems like I got. Except for one problem. About halfway through this summer, I realized I was miserable. I was just miserable. I wasn't happy at all. I was getting everything I ever wanted. I didn't have homework. I didn't have a job. I didn't have responsibilities. I was hanging out. I was lounging around, and I realized I was miserable. And I was miserable because looking back on it and looking at this text, and what it tells me is that summer I was just going, you know what? I'm going to put God on autopilot right now. Like I'm just going to kind of assume he's there and live the life I want to lead. I didn't abandon my faith. I just didn't think much about it. I wanted to have a really fun summer where I did what I wanted to do and not really think about Jesus until the end of the summer. And I was miserable. And I wonder if some of you here tonight have put God on autopilot this summer. Like, I wonder if some of you this summer have just kind of been like, yeah, I'm a Christian, I go to church on Sunday, but the truth is, like, you haven't opened your Bible all summer, or you haven't really actually carved out any time to pray, or when you get together with your friends, even your Christian friends, you never really talk about Jesus, you just kind of talk about things that are going on in life. Like, I wonder if some of you have put God on autopilot this summer. And if that's you, I just need to be the one to challenge you tonight to say that your faith doesn't get to stay in neutral. Your soul is either shriveling away from God or it is growing toward Him. There's no third option. And you need to make the decision that if your faith in Christ is important to you, if you believe the greatest joy, the greatest adventure is found in Jesus, you can't just assume that He is part of your life. And here you've got David. I want to put that last verse up there. That verse 9. It says, in that time, it says, Saul kept a close eye on David. My fear for you is some of you keep a close eye on people, keep a close eye on your summer, but ultimately what we would want is for Saul to keep his eyes not on David, but on God. And I wonder if some of you here tonight need to hear that you have spent your entire summer focusing on yourself, and it's time to put your focus, set your eyes on God. Here's how it continues, the text. It says, in verse 10, it says, the next day an evil spirit came from God, came forcefully on Saul. This is one of the toughest sentences in Scripture. It just is. I mean, if you read this and you're not bothered by it on some level, you're not really thinking about what this is like. See, here's what we believe, and I don't assume all of you believe what I believe, but I just want to tell you what this book teaches. And what this book tells us about life and reality is that the physical world that we see is not all that exists. That there is a spiritual realm where there are spirits, where there are angels and there are demons, and they are real, and they are as real as you and me standing here. And they are active and alive in the world today, trying to cause our good or cause evil toward us. And I know for some of you that sounds crazy, but just here's what I want to suggest to you. I almost don't think you can be a sane, rational person and not believe that there's evil in the world. Like, I have no idea how you can watch the news and see all the things that have been happening. From shootings in our country, to these police shootings, to this thing that happened in France this last week with a truck. Like, I just don't know how you can watch all of that and think that evil is not a real thing in our world. And we as Christians believe that evil is not just an idea or a morality, but evil actually exists, and evil actually comes upon people, and that we actually believe in spirits, we actually believe in angels and demons, and that's what's happening here in this text. But maybe I'll even take it a step further for you and clarify something, Chris. For some of you, the idea that the next day an evil spirit came forcefully on Saul would be a really okay verse for you, but the thing that's bothering you is these two words, from God. And some of you are really struggling with the idea that an evil spirit would come from God. Because in your mind, God would never send an evil spirit on someone. How could God send something bad toward anyone? Doesn't God just send good things? And here's what I want you to wrestle with tonight. I want you to wrestle with the fact that when the Bible tells us something that bothers us, or when the Bible tells us something that we don't quite like or understand or agree with, your first reaction, if you are a follower of Jesus, if you've given your life to Christ, your first reaction when you read something that troubles you in this book should not be to say, this book must be wrong. Your first reaction should be, what is wrong in my thinking and in my heart that makes me not like that? Because for some of you, you have this belief that God would never, ever, ever, ever send anything into anyone's life that would cause anyone pain. And that's a nice belief. And that's a nice idea. But it's just not the belief of this book. And it's not what we believe as Christians. So this may bother you to your core, but one of the things about our God is that He sends good and bad things into and out of our lives. And it is not because God is bad, and it's not because He's not able to. It's because God is two things. These are two words I want you walking out of here tonight thinking about. It is because our God is sovereign. Sovereign means He's in charge. He's the king. He's totally and utterly in control of everything. And He has every right to do anything He wants in this world, to you, me, or anyone else. God is sovereign and in charge. And then the second word I want you to hear tonight is that God is righteous. Meaning whatever God decides to do is right. Even if you don't think it's right, even if you don't think it's the way it should be, even if you think things could be done different, whatever God decides to do is right. There is no standard of morality that God has to adhere to. God is the standard of morality. So that God is sovereign and he can do whatever he wants. And God is righteous, meaning whatever he does is the right thing. And so when I read this, that the next day an evil spirit from God forcefully came on Saul, it bothers me a little in my soul because I go, God, how could you send something bad into someone's life? And yet what that shows me is that I'm either challenging or questioning that God has the right to do whatever he wants, or I'm challenging or questioning the fact that whatever God does is right. And I need to challenge some of you tonight that you have this little God that you've put into a box, and he's just sort of this nice tooth fairy who shows up and gives you nice things. But the thing about our God is when you really read this book and you really start to go, okay, is this really true about our God? It should challenge you. It should bother you. It should change your beliefs. You should look at things in the Bible sometimes and go, man, that bothers me, and that's a good thing. Because that's how God changes you. If every time you read the Bible, you just agree with everything and everything sounds good to you, you're not reading the Bible carefully enough. Here in this sentence, it says, the next day an evil spirit from God came forcefully on Saul. That might bother some of you, and I just want to say that's okay, as long as you're willing to say, you know what, God has the right to do whatever he wants, and whatever God does do is right. And then here's the result of this. It says in verse 10, it says, the next day, after the evil spirit comes from Saul, it says, he was prophesying in his house when David was playing the lyre, as he usually did. Saul had a spear in his hand, and he hurled it, saying, I'll pin David to the wall. But David eluded him twice. And so here you've got this Saul, this guy who has this thing sent on him, like this evil has been sent upon him, and he's experiencing this evil spirit. And so he sees David maybe in the corner of the room, and he's playing the lyre, like he's playing this musical instrument, and Saul has a spear, and he's so jealous, and he's so bitter, and he's so twisted up over David, and his eyes are set on David, not on the Lord. His eyes are set on David, not on God, who is the creator of everything. And he takes the spear, and he throws it at David. And it says that David eludes him, but it doesn't just say he eludes him once, it says he eludes him twice, which means either Saul had two spears, or he threw it at David, missed, and then picked up the spear and threw it at him again. Like, this is the scene David is going through here. Like, I want you to just put yourself into David's shoes right now. Like, what at this point has David done wrong? He's done nothing wrong. He's done everything Saul has asked him to do. Saul says, go into battle. He says, okay, I'll go into battle. Saul says, win the battle. He wins the battle. He's doing everything right. Everyone loves him. Everything's going well. He's doing everything right. He's done nothing wrong. And yet here's Saul saying literally the words, I'll pin David to the wall. And here's what I wonder tonight. I wonder if there's anyone in the room right now who would say that there is someone who's trying to pin you to the wall. I wonder if there's anyone in the room right now who would say, there's someone in my life who is saying things about me, she's gossiping about me, he's lying about me, he's saying hurtful things to me, he's doing things that frustrate me, he's doing things that break my heart. I wonder if any of you have someone in your life who, through no fault of your own, is trying to cause you harm. Like, there are times in our life where it's really clear, like, I have some fault and he has some fault, and so we'll kind of meet in the middle. But then there really are times in our life where there are people in our lives who are trying to cause us harm, and we did nothing to bring it on. Like, I remember being in college, and I just remember this really gnarly time of my life where I was involved in this ministry with these people, and I just kind of had this heart of like, okay, I want to reach people with the gospel. I want people at LMU to know Jesus, and so I went on this whole thing to introduce people to Jesus, and that made this one woman so mad. Like, she was so angry that I wanted to share Jesus with people, which wouldn't have mattered to me because I'm totally comfortable with people not liking the whole Jesus thing. The only problem was she was in charge of the ministry, which I just could not for the life of me understand. I'm like, I want more people to know Jesus. And she's like, no. And I was like, and so I'm mad and I'm angry, and she starts kind of saying some things that are hurtful, and she sat me down, and she like, you ever been just like totally condescended to, having that moment where someone kind of like pats you on the head, like, here, and you're like, oh, I want to hurt you, but I love Jesus. Like that was me in that moment. Like, I really was so angry because I was just trying to share Jesus. I was trying to do just like David, the right thing. And here's this lady trying to pin me to the wall, trying to hurt me, trying to bring pain into my life. And if you're there right now, I need you to hear how I process that story. Like maybe that's you, and you've actually got someone in your life who, for whatever reason, by no fault of your own, is causing you pain. And here is what I want to say about that moment. While I was going through that about 2-month process of having to deal with this lady and all of the anger and all of the bitterness, and I ended up, just so you know, it ended up with me losing that job. Like, it ended up with me like going away from that job and not being a part of that ministry anymore because that lady was so out to get me. Here's what I believe God was doing at that time. I don't know all of the things, and I don't know everything in God's plan, but here's what I believe in that time, that God was sovereign. That God knew exactly what was happening in my life and in that ministry and in that lady's life. That God was in charge. God wasn't in heaven like wringing his hands like, oh, how do I help Brian right now? Like, God knew exactly what he was doing. He was totally in charge of that moment. He was completely in control. Meaning it was completely his plan that I would go through that miserable 2 months. Because God is sovereign. But I also believe during that season that God is righteous. And I don't want you to be confused. Maybe some of you are going through something where someone is hurting you or someone is saying something about you, and that's not righteous. That is evil. That is wicked. That is bad. What this lady did to me when I was in college, this wasn't right. It wasn't good. It was not the right thing. And yet, right in the midst of this, I believe God is righteous. That he had me going through this season because he was doing what was right. And I don't know what that means in the life of her. I do know what it meant in the life of me, that it shaped me and refined me and actually made me more courageous and more bold about the gospel. It made me more like, all right, people are going to hate me and I don't care. I'm going to talk about Jesus. Because in that season, God was sovereign. He was putting me through this, but God was also righteous, doing the right thing. And that is so incredibly difficult to see during seasons when you're going through it. But I promise you tonight, if you're going through a season where things are hard and someone's trying to pin you to the wall, someone's trying to hurt you, someone's trying to cause you pain, and you just go, listen, I don't like this and I don't want to be in this season, but I believe God is sovereign, he's in control, and he's righteous. Whatever he does is the right thing. The moment you begin to believe that, life becomes the greatest adventure it could possibly be. Because suddenly the adventure isn't you trying to avoid every possible painful situation where anything could ever go wrong or be awkward or be misunderstood, but suddenly it becomes you stepping in faith with God, going, whatever happens, God, you're in control. And whatever happens, God, you're working it for my good and for your glory. That's the adventure I want for you guys. That you would walk into whatever situation this summer holds, whatever situation going into school this fall holds, like whatever's going on in your life, that you would say, God is sovereign, he's in charge, God is righteous, whatever he does is good. And I'm going to trust him, I'm going to walk with him, even when I don't understand, even when things are difficult, because I trust him, and I believe, I have faith, I have confidence, that the same God who died for my sins and rose again from the dead has my best in mind. And if I would trust him, trust that he's sovereign, trust that he's righteous, he would do mighty things in my life as I walk with him. So here's how I want to close out our time today. I want to read you one of the Psalms. And our worship team's going to come up and we're going to sing. But I need you to hear this psalm first. And there's a reason I'm picking this psalm. See, one of the things about the Psalms, if you don't know what they are, they're a book of songs that were written in the Old Testament. Actually, most of them, many of them, were written by David. And what's cool is we can look at Psalms, look at these poems, these songs he wrote during different areas of his life and go, wow, he was in this kind of season and he wrote this song, or here's what he was going through and he wrote this song. And so one of the things that is so cool about this is this season where Saul is trying to kill him. And if you want to go read the story, it gets even crazier than this. David's on the run. He's hiding in caves. Saul's in my own heart and challenges my view of you, God. And I just pray for the person in this room right now. And God, I don't know who it is. I don't know who I'm preaching to tonight, but I just pray for the person who feels like they're being pinned up against a wall. They're being made fun of, they're being mocked, they're being gossiped about, they're being lied about. I pray for the person in this room who feels like they're going through absolute hell right now. God, I pray that you would show yourself to be strong, that you would show yourself to be gracious. I pray that they would trust in the saving name of Jesus and Jesus alone. So God, give us strength as we sing to you tonight. May you stir our souls for worship as we trust in you, God, as you are sovereign and righteous. And we pray this in the name of Jesus.